Hello and welcome back to another episode of the EFL Fantasy Podcast. My name is Jamie.
My name is Angus.
My name is Dan.
And before we get into our Game Week 3 review, just a little reminder to everybody, wherever you watch or listen to the podcast, please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. And also on our socials, it will help us massively. Game Week 3 then, guys, how did it go for you two?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I guess I'll just jump into my team at this point. Actually, I got 66 minus 4, which wasn't terrible, wasn't sort of great. Red arrow, which I expected in a boost heavy week, so I'm not too concerned about that. A Dieng for 4, ranking Costello and Manning 3, Davis 10. Dan James 9, Sara 10, Dewsbury Hall captain for 12, Mavrodides 1, Broadhead 2, Armstrong 9, and I vice captained Will Keane that got me 3. So not ideal on that front. Got maybe one issue with Joe Bryan missing Millwall's game on Sunday with a knock. But given that Millwall described it as a knock, I'm hoping that that's not really an issue that I need to sort. So, not necessarily an amazing week, but in the context of some of the disappointing midfield dynamos in particular going around, I'm pretty content with that score, to be honest.
Absolutely. And what about you, Dan?
Very similar to Angus, 64 minus 4. The transfers I did were Sara and Broadhead in for Semedo and Vaughan. I've done that pretty early in the week because I had the exact money, so I didn't want to miss out through price rises. Captained Armstrong for 18, vice captain Dewsbury Hall for 9, Dieng 4, ranking Costello 3, Manning 3, Davis 10, Loser 2, Mavroди 1, Sara 10, Piroe 2, Broadhead 2. So I've dropped down to 258th, but as Angus mentioned, with a heavy boost week, and I didn't play one, and I took a hit. I'm pretty happy where I am, to be honest.
Brilliant. And I'm probably round about the same as you two, 64. I didn't take a hit this week. Captain Broadhead, I brought him in for... That is a very good question. I can't even remember who I did bring him in for. I brought him in especially for this game. Captained him for 4 points. Vice captained Armstrong for 13. Other than that, Dieng 4, ranking Costello 3. Manning and Walker Peters 3 and 4, same as you two with Davies 10. I had Hoover for 13. Midfield of Loser and Roberts with 2 each. Dewsbury Hall with 6. So, yeah, not great. Captaincy didn't work out, but I can't really complain because my alternative was going to be Roberts. So he'd have scored exactly the same points as Broadhead. So I can't moan there. I've got a red arrow down to 353rd, which, like you two just said, I'm not really concerned about. There was a lot of boost played. I'm within a 50-60 points of the leader. Some of them have used 3 boosts already. Some have used 2. So, yeah, not too concerned about that. And what about the pod team, Angus?
I'm going to whip through this very quickly because we lost in Thursday Night Wars this week. We came last.
Last?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
59 minus 4. We brought in Frokjar Jensen and I think Broadhead, who scored 3 and 2. So that was a really successful pair of moves. Rushworth in goal. We had Manning and Walker Peters, which was 3 and 4. Ranking Costello 3, Davis 10. Dewsbury Hall vice captain, Adam Armstrong captain. We had Patrick Roberts and Mavrodides as well. So not a great week for us, but at least we got the 2 wins on the board to start.
Who won it this week?
The community team, I think.
Okay, interesting. Disappointing from us, so we need to dust the house down and go back next week in game week 4. So now then we'll get into the games then. We've got 6 featured games, including 6 featured players. We'll then go through the other results and then go through all the questions at the end. Excuse me. For everybody listening or watching, if my mic is low, I am aware of them issues. I do apologise, but I have no idea how to fix it. So I am trying to stick to the microphone. So I do apologise if I end up turning away. But we'll get into it, Dan. And the first game we've got is Norwich 3, Millwall 1. What were the notable changes in lineups?
Yeah, so for Norwich, Fastnet was in for Hernandez. Millwall changed to 4-2-3-1. Saville and Essie came in for Dimore and, as Angus mentioned, Brian. So Murray Wallace was back to playing left back rather than left centre back. Yeah, that's basically it for the team news.
And the key information from this game, Angus.
Well, I think really it's all about Norwich, isn't it? Another very good game for them. They have started the season well, I think. Even that draw that might feel slightly disappointing to them against Southampton, still a decent result ultimately. But Jonathan Rowe scored again. Very nicely taken goal as well, actually. That was the sort of really notable thing with that. After receiving the ball from Ashley Barnes, sort of bent it into the far corner. Sargent then made it 2 from a Gabriel Sara cross. Ashley Barnes got the third, and then very late on, Emakhu got a goal with an assist for Bradshaw. So I guess it's the returns there for sort of Rowe, Barnes, Sargent, and Sara.
I think there's a couple of players we can talk about from Norwich, but I'm going to go straight into our key player from this match, and it's Josh Sargent. So in this game, 1 goal, 4 shots, 1 key pass, basically 9 points for this week. Is he an asset we should be considering?
I think so. I think he's started very well. I think that attack is looking to link up really nicely now, with the sort of Barnes and Sargent more centrally and Rowe and Fastnet either side of them. I think is starting to look really good. So, and I think that's ultimately good for Sargent. And it's the variety of sort of involvements he's getting, like even the goal, getting onto the cross and heading it in. I think can only sort of be encouraging as well.
Dan, the fixtures, the next 4 coming up, they're on the screen. Huddersfield away, Rotherham away, Stoke at home, and then Leicester at home. Those next 2 in particular seem really appealing, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I'm currently on Sara and Stacey, so I'm happy with that. I'm guessing the big decision is, do we triple up? I don't have Rowe, and he's massively underpriced, isn't it? Well, I think he's already up to 4.7. I don't know if I'll go there. I do like Sargent. We've been struggling with strikers, haven't we? I've got Armstrong, Piroe, and Broadhead, and apart from Armstrong, I'm guessing Piroe's probably the one that will go. So I could also roll this week, but it feels like getting in on the third Norwich would probably be wise, because I think they're the best team in the league at the minute.
From talk on Twitter within the community and a couple of group chats that we're in and stuff, people mentioning Norwich assets seem to be going Sara and Rowe, and then one other one. I know you just mentioned you got Stacey, Dan, but there isn't much talk of defensive assets, is there, Angus? Really, it's those 3 in particular that seem to be popular.
No, not much talk of it at all, and I think it is interesting. You've got Stacey. I think Giannoulis has been sort of ticking along on the other side as well. So I think it is somewhere that you can go.
And what's your preference with the assets?
Well, I've only got Sara at the moment. I think logically, the argument is probably to go with Rowe. There is a little bit of a wondering about, whether it's sort of, a hot start that's then going to calm down, not because he was 4.5 in the game, but just because, not necessarily much of a track record. Is this him sort of bursting it into, action, or is this just, a hot run, which I guess we'll find out in due course. But I'm sort of keeping an open mind. I do like Sargent. We talked about him sort of before the season, just that little bit of concern about how it was going to interact with Barnes. I think it's going better now. Feels like Barnes is more playing off Sargent rather than the other way around. At least it looked that way at the weekend, and I think that did work better. But yeah, I struggle to recommend them at the moment, just because, not because I think they're bad, but because I'm struggling myself to pick between them other than Sara. So it's tough. I think you could make logical arguments for about 6 players, Stacey, Giannoulis, Fastnacht, Rowe, Barnes, and Sargent.
No, I agree. I'm in a dilemma. I've got Rowe. I've benched him all 3 weeks so far, so I've lost out on, 24 of his points that he's accumulated so far. And it was one of them after the game last week. It was a comment that FPL Frog, who's obviously a Norwich fan, said. He said he's not going to score an open goal every single week. So I took that, he's right. It was a very easy goal to score. And then obviously gets on the score sheet again. So now's the time I think I've got to play him really. Huddersfield away, Rotherham away. On paper, 2 very good fixtures. Sara I don't own yet, which I was going to bring him in this week and didn't. I think he'd be my priority with Rowe, and then do I go up on a triple? I don't know. But yeah, Millwall, obviously from a Gaffr point of view, nothing to really talk about there, is there? They're struggling at the moment. Gary Rowett's coming under a lot of pressure from Millwall fans already, so that's not looking good. So would you say just leave that there, or are they team 2 targets?
Well, I wouldn't go as far as to target them at this point. I think they're sort of decent enough. They obviously, were second best in that game, but I think they've been absolutely fine. But yeah, I mean, those who have particularly some of the attacking assets are probably jumping off. I've just gone on Joe Bryan, depending on his injury timeline. That might be a move, but I'm not sort of desperate. If he's going to come back in the team, I don't really view it as a problem at this point.
Dan, I haven't seen many Millwall players in people's teams online lately. A lot of people would have started with Nisbet. He's only got 5 points so far. I think, would you agree that's a sell?
I think so, yeah. I think we've not seen much of Millwall because they had Borough first game and then obviously Norwich in the third game. So I think people were sort of waiting and see. Like Angus, I do have Brian, but if he's a doubt, I'll just bench him this week. I'm pretty happy with the rest of my squad. So yeah, I think they're just a wait and see at the minute. Millwall.
Okay. Should we move on to the next game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one then was the lunchtime kickoff on Saturday. Southampton went away to Plymouth and won 2-1. Noticeable lineup information, Dan?
Yeah, so Plymouth made 3 changes. Kesler, Hayder, Kundle and Azaz were in for Early, Randall and Callum Wright. For Southampton, Charles and Adams were in for Smallbone and Alcaraz, who I believe are both injured. I know Smallbone definitely is. Yeah, that's it.
And key takes from the game, Angus?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just start on that lineup news. Smallbone was injured. There is still no word on why Alcaraz was absent.
Apparently, he got injured in. They done open air training. Apparently, he went off in that.
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of been looking through sort of what the reporters have been saying, and all there's been is Alcaraz isn't in the squad. So, where all the talk has been that he was going to sort of stick around, and then suddenly people have started talking about transfer with him and whether he's actually going to leave or whether they're sort of asking for too much from or whatever. So who knows? But I'm sure that will become clearer as the week goes on. But yeah, I think this was an interesting game. I think, Plymouth gave a good account of themselves. We know anyone who sort of looked at their home record, I didn't see a lot of them in League One, but looking at their home record from last season, it was exceptional. So I think that it's one of those things where they are really going to be a match for anyone at home. I think it's tough for them against teams of this quality. Like obviously, Nathan Teller opened the scoring, a nice little pass into him from Adam Armstrong. Plymouth almost immediately equalised through Ryan Hardy, who, as much as I want to be positive about him, I also have to be heavily critical of him for a ridiculous dive as he was going round the goalkeeper.
Yeah, I was shocking.
Like, if you're going to dive, and I'm not condoning diving, at least if you're going to dive, make it look less obvious. Like, it was just such an obvious dive. It was sort of like, what are you doing? And then sort of right near the end, Che Adams pops up with a winner again. Looks like he might be off. Whether he decides that actually he doesn't want to go to Everton, given the way they played the next day, is another matter entirely. But yeah, so obviously he popped up with a winner again. I think Southampton. I was actually more encouraged by them in this game than the first two games of the season. I think they did look a bit better, particularly against a tough team and a team that was playing well against them. I think they looked a bit more. Like, I basically throw the Sheffield Wednesday game out of it because like they set up so poorly against them, particularly in the first half. They looked more sort of, I guess, fluent when they went forward, which I think was probably an encouraging sign for them.
And I didn't watch the game on Saturday, but for those on YouTube, I've took the lineups from SofaScore. Here it's showing Armstrong is in the middle three. In the midfield is one of the eights, which is basically like a 10. Is that right, or did he play up front with Adams?
Yeah, I mean, there's a slight disagreement. I mean, me and Dan even had this slight disagreement, which doesn't really matter, about whether he was playing as an 8 or a 10. But yeah, he wasn't. It wasn't a front two. Armstrong was playing deeper.
Okay, and it's quite a good segue actually, because our featured player is Adam Armstrong. So in the game v Plymouth, he got 1 assist, 4 shots, 4 key passes, which gave him 4 bonus points. How impressed are you with Adam Armstrong? Every single week he seems to be getting points.
I think the key here was that, he was deployed in that deeper role and he was vital for them. He was so central to what they were doing. And I think some people have seen this from the weekend, either watching the game or just sort of seeing the information afterwards, and are a little bit put off by him playing in the deeper role. I am actually the opposite, in that it's not necessarily like, oh, I'd rather he was playing there than up front, because you'd rather your premium striker was playing up front. But I don't think it's necessarily a negative if he's playing in that deep role. He showed what he can do. I mean, he got an assist, he got max bonus playing in that role. So I don't necessarily see it as a problem.
What about you, Dan?
I wasn't overly impressed seeing him there, but we know he loves shooting, and if he's there, he's quite an intelligent player. He'll probably get, as we saw, more key passes, so he might be more involved. And if he's starting doing 2 or 3 key passes, he only has to do like get an assist or something, and he'll get top bonus just like that. So I'm a bit torn, but I think they got QPR next, so I'm willing to give him one more game.
Yes,
I think
QPR at home, then Sunderland away, Leicester at home, Ipswich at home. So this QPR one's a big one in terms of, no disrespect, an easier fixture on paper. Then they obviously go away to Sunderland and 2 back-to-back home games against tough teams. But from someone who didn't watch the game and basically just gone off this and the short highlights that I've watched today, Armstrong seems to be involved very often, and he was also unlucky for Che Adams' goal. It was his header that came out off the keeper, wasn't it? So his movement
And he had the
was
free
really
kick
good.
saved as well.
He did, yeah. So I agree. I think you want your premium striker playing up front, scoring goals. But if he's going to be heavily involved in all types of play, in terms of creating and scoring while taking shots, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think he's definitely still a captaincy option against QPR, and there's no reason to come away from that. Other than Armstrong, is there anyone you'd like to mention from Southampton?
I think I'd like to mention Shea Charles. It's obviously his first start for them. I think he had a couple of sort of iffy moments, but in general, I think he looked like he can be a useful player for them. And I think, it's just notable more players might leave, plus a couple of injuries. I know they brought in Flynn Downs, but by the sounds of Flynn Downs' comments, I'm not sure whether he'll be ready to play straight away. So he gave himself a very nasty bout of food poisoning. So that's why his signing was delayed. So they might need a Shea Charles to step in at times, and I think it's important for them that he can do.
Dan, anything else from you regarding Southampton?
I guess we've got to get back to Manning, haven't we? And Walker Peters.
Well, it's funny you say that because that was going to be my last question to you both. So I'm going to ask you now, Dan,
he's-
because
Yeah.
we all own Manning. Do any of you have Kyle Walker Peters as well? No. Well, I do. But Manning, if he does not get a return against QPR at home, is he on the chopping block? Because we're paying $7 million for him, and he's not returning like a $7 million defender.
And what's annoying is he's getting booked every single week, so he's not getting in the bonus. So it's so frustrating. They don't look great at the back either. So yeah, he's got one more game week, and then I think he might be going.
What about you, Angus?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was actually talking to Luke Irons about this yesterday, I think, because he looked up some of Ryan Manning's numbers. And in terms of things like chance creation and everything, Manning is still doing really well. The problem that we maybe didn't factor in with him going to Southampton rather than Swansea is at Swansea, he would do that and collect all the bonus because he wasn't playing with as good players, all due respect to them. Whereas at Southampton, you've got the likes of Armstrong, Teller, Adams, Alcaraz if he plays, Edozie, Walker Peters. It's sort of like it in addition to the bookings that he's getting, it sort of affects his ability to tick over the bonus. So I think it might be something that I'm looking at potentially reevaluating, particularly with some of these other defenders that are looking like good options, about whether I shift that money around a little bit.
Well, I've probably more desperate to sell him than you two because I'm on a double Southampton defence at the moment, and I'm more happy with Walker Peters than I am with Manning. But yeah, that's Southampton. We've obviously spoke about them a lot over the last 3 weeks. Plymouth, very quickly. Next 4 I've got in front of me: Birmingham away, Blackburn at home, Preston away, and then Bristol City away. So, I wouldn't say an easy run, but I wouldn't say a tough run on paper. People like Mumba, Whittaker, are they putting their hands up for you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was looking at it the other day in part, just moves that I'm potentially going to be looking at going forward. And I think you could look at Mumba, Whittaker, Hardy, or even Azaz as well. As he picks up more minutes, I think he could be another option from Plymouth.
Right, Dan?
Yeah, same. I was really impressed with Plymouth. I saw bits and pieces of them in League One, and to be honest, I thought they were going to change back to the 5 at the back here, but they didn't. They kept Mumba in the front 3, which makes him even better option. I know he's 5.5, but you're basically getting a midfielder at 5.5 who's going to get clean sheets
Yeah. No,
points as well. So if they have like 3 home games out of 4 throughout the season, he's going to be a very good option, I think.
and who would be your preference between Whittaker and Hardy?
Whitaker.
Whittaker at 6-1.
Yeah, I think it's tough because I think Whittaker's better. I'd be tempted by Hardy just because he's that little bit cheaper and obviously the central striker. But I think Whittaker is probably going to do better over the long haul.
Okay, brilliant. Let's go on to the next game then. And that was Blackburn 1, Hull 2. Notable lineup news, Dan?
Hedges was in for Mark Conde, and for Hull, Wine, new signing, was in for the Kiddo. So straight in for Twine.
Okay, and key points from this one, Angus?
I think not to completely discredit Hull, but I think it's difficult to accurately assess a game or attach much meaning to it when a player gets sent off after 16 minutes.
Yeah.
It just completely distorts the game. So particularly those on ranking Costello, if you're panicking at all, there's no reason to. It just completely changed this game. Pickering getting sent off. It was the right call. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sort of questioning the decision in any way. Last man foul. Panicking about Liam Delap being through on goal. Let him shoot. Based on what Liam Delap has done in the championship, just for whoever, let him shoot. So obviously that changed things. I think, obviously Hull struggled, I think, more than I expected initially against the 10 men. And, Blackburn eventually took the lead through Sam Gallagher. And then it was the Aaron Connolly show. It felt a bit too simple, the goals. That's the one criticism I would offer of Blackburn at that point, particularly when they were ahead. It was the 2 goals were then very simple. I think one was ball basically through the middle. Another one was just lifted over the top. And I do think that's something that they'll be a little bit disappointed with. Credit to Connolly, he took the goals well. Everyone knows I'm a big fan of Aaron Connolly. But yeah, I think having survived that long and having got ahead, Blackburn, I think they'll be a little bit disappointed with the way they then ended up losing it.
Okay, and obviously our featured player is Aaron Connolly. 24 minutes he was on the pitch for when he came on. 11 touches, 2 shots, and 2 goals. Now, I get what you're saying. The defending, especially for the first one, Sari kind of just lost it over. And it wasn't to clean it. It looked like it come off his shin. But it doesn't matter. It went in the back of the net. And then a route one over the top. Keepers, I don't know what the keeper's doing. He just passes it into an empty net, really. But, that is 3 goals now.
Yeah.
With this brace. They've got Bristol City at home. But then they go away to Leicester, Coventry at home, and Leeds at home. So Hull have had a good start, but they're going to be tested, aren't they, over the next 4 games after Bristol City? Well, 3 after Bristol City.
Yeah, I think that's the key. What you said there, they probably needed to have a good start because of some of the games to come. So credit to them, they've taken advantage of that, but it does get a bit tougher now.
And Bristol City's the Friday night game as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm actually looking forward to that game. I never thought I'd say that. But I haven't really seen much of Hull yet.
There's a better game Friday night.
Oh, no, Dan. No, absolutely not.
No, there isn't.
Not
there
that
definitely
league.
isn't.
Is that a Sky game, though? The whole game?
I don't know, actually. I just saw that it was on Friday deadline, so I don't know if it will be if the Premier League's on. And then
No, it is not.
Oh.
Oh, what a shame for the millions of people who'd want to watch Bristol City and Hull.
Can you imagine, given all the narratives about, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but all the people who go on about any Premier League game that's not on TV, particularly if it's not the Saturday 3 p.m., the championship fans everywhere being robbed of Hull Bristol City.
And just to show them what that. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about these. Hull's a tough one, really, for me, just looking at it from the outside. You know, you've had Turfan, he's on 23 points, but obviously that came from his Hull last week. Connolly is now on 24 points. Dlapp's up there on 16, which isn't too bad, but other than that, there's nobody really standing out to me as an asset. Would I be right in thinking that?
There is. I'd be going Twine all day.
Well,
If we get Twine that was in League One, I know it's a bit hard to tell because of the as Angus mentioned, they were down to 10 men, but Twine got 3 key passes. He had 5 shots, and he's renowned for just shooting all the time in the lower league. So I think at some point, probably not straight away because of their run, but at some point, I think Twine at 6.5 is going to be an option, I think.
it's a good shout. It's one for me to look out for because I'm still waiting for the hype of Twine, because obviously he joined Burnley last year from Kidons, and there's a lot of talk, and as everybody knows, I don't watch League One football, so I was eagerly anticipating, like, waiting for him, and then obviously he had really bad injuries throughout the season, so we only saw glimpses of him. So yeah, I think that's a good shout. Obviously I wouldn't go anywhere near that yet. I'd have to see something to make me want to go there, but completely get that down. I think you've raised a good point. Angus, anything from you regarding Hull?
Don't be fooled by Delap getting bonus. It's because he keeps kicking the ball at the goalkeeper. And there's some potentially interesting transfer business going on at Hull coming up. So they're potentially signing Jaden Philogene on a permanent transfer.
Oh, I hate that. As a Stoke fan, I loved him. But a very good signing that would be.
And apparently, just to, really just bring in half the Villa team, they're also potentially bringing in Eric Boonham, who did well for QPR last season in midfield, and potentially bringing in Keenan Davis, which that's just too many strikers. I don't think you need to add Keenan Davis to that mix, particularly a bunch of strikers who don't necessarily have the best goal scoring record, and you add Keenan Davis to that. They clearly have a type. But I think Philogene and Eric Boonham would be serious additions for them.
Yeah, that's worth waiting on. Now, what have we got? 31st, the deadline on the 1st?
I think it's the 31st.
Is it so? We've got, roughly 9 days left, just over a week
Yeah.
left of the window then. Anything on Blackburn that you'd like to mention?
Not too much, really. I mean, it's like I say, it's difficult to assess them based on how early the red card was. But yeah, I mean, if you've gone Pickering, that's a get rid. But and maybe now that Gallagher's got a goal, that might create a problem for anyone who's gone with Leonard, the young striker.
Yeah, I think it's just frustrating for Ranking Costello owners, isn't it? Because obviously game week 1 didn't go well. After game week 2, we said, that's what you got him for. And then this week, he couldn't really kick on when they're down to 10 men. So, yeah, stay patient with Rankin Costello. But we'll move on to the next game, which was a Friday night's game. Leeds 1, West Brom 1. Notable lineup news, Dan?
Yeah, Roden and Rutt were in for Cresswell and Paveda. And for West Brom, they moved to a 3-4-2-1, brought in Thomas Asante. Surprisingly, he came in for Townsend, and they decided it'd be a good idea to play Matt Phillips at left wing back over Townsend, which, yeah, that shocked me when I saw that lineup. Yeah, that's it.
Key notes from this game then, Angus?
I'll actually start with that. People who've listened to the pod for a while know I don't have a lot of time for Matt Phillips. I thought he actually did quite well in that left wing back role. He had to do a lot of tracking of Luke Ayling, and I think he did. I think that might be why he was in, because of that tracking back and the sort of the constant running that was needed. That's the only thing I can think. He possibly has a slight edge there over Townsend. But yeah, I was going into this not sure what to expect, particularly with Leeds having started quite poorly. I thought they were really good. I thought they were much better in this game. Luke Ayling, again, I'm just talking about all the players that I'm such a big fan of. Constantly high presence up on the right-hand side. Dan James, absolute menace on the left-hand side. In the second half, West Brom literally resorted to quadrupling up on him because it says a little bit about some of the other Leeds players that they were like, we're not scared of the rest of you. We just need to stop him. But it's also indicative of the game that Dan James was having. And I just thought they were much better in this game. Shackleton on the right wing, not necessarily going to offer you a lot in attack, but did some really good off-ball work. The goal they conceded, I feel for them. You could have an argument about whether Jason Malumbi should still have been on the pitch, who has the shot, and then it goes in off Brandon Thomas Asante's arm.
Did you see celebration as well?
Yeah.
Because obviously I didn't watch the game Friday night. And I was watching the highlights and I'm thinking, what is this guy doing? It's like you're looking beyond the pitch and then you're celebrating that like you've just pile drived one in from 30 yards.
So that was very strange, and I know that Leeds fans have they have plenty of right to be frustrated at that. And they had some good chances. I mean, Palmer produced an amazing save to deny Dan James, and a good save in the first half from one that was actually deflected. And eventually they did get their equaliser. Dan James crossed to the back post. Luke Ayling with a good header up above a flat-footed, I think it was Eric Peters. And it was, it was the least they deserved. They were much better than West Brom in this game. I was actually a little bit disappointed with West Brom. But impressed with Leeds in this one, particularly given the just long list of absentees, even the ones that are still at the club, let alone the ones that have left that weren't available for this game.
Okay, well, our featured player, Angus, is Dan James. So in this game, he had 3 shots, 5 key passes, 1 assist, which got him 4 bonus points. It's quite hard with Leeds at the moment because we spoke about them over the last 2 weeks. We know what's going on behind the scenes regarding the players wanting out and all that kind of thing. But, you're one of the people who already owned James from the start, so obviously you've kept faith with him and got a return there. But for people who haven't got them, is it too soon, before Ipswich away, and then the transfer window still open for another week? Would you wait a little bit, or what would be your advice?
I think so. I think at this point I would wait. They're looking to be very active in terms of doing business. We're recording on Tuesday night. Wilfred Gnonto has returned to training today. There's been a lot of talk about Sinistera. They were talking about, Farke kept talking about legal aspects of leaving him out. It appears that was about clarifying whether his release clause had expired or not. So he might be back in, and then they're looking to bring more players in. There might be more interest in Sinistera and Gnonto. So I think that uncertainty, you've got this one game before the window closes, and then I think you can reassess with Leeds.
Dan, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I agree with Angus. It's a tricky game against Ipswich before the window closes as well. So there's no need to rush. I don't think a lot of us will have playable teams anyway. I think I'm benching a couple of players that I'd be happy to start. So there's no rush. I think one person I think we might need to consider is Luke Ayling. Like, I know he's terrible defensively, but it looks like he's clearly ahead of Drame, but he's so attacking. He's going to get bonus and he's going to get goals and assists as well, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bit annoying that the window closes after Ipswich and then the first game after the window is Sheffield Wednesday, because I'd want Pile in there, trip up, but a bit of uncertainty around. I need it to settle down a little bit before I go there. But yeah, going from what you two have said and what I saw online on Friday, Leeds did look very good, so they are worth basically watching. West Brom, nothing there at the moment, if we're honest.
No, I mean, if you're wanting a player from them at this point, the best I could give you is Darnell Furlong. Just because if there's any issue with Townsend's playing reliably, and you want that defensive cover, then it's going to be Furlong, isn't it? But I'd wait and see if Townsend's going to miss any more games, because obviously if you were going to go there defensively, you'd rather go him than Furlong. Otherwise, I didn't see much of encouragement at all. So yeah, not for me.
Okay, should we move on to the next game?
Yeah.
Okay, Sunderland 2, Rotherham 1. So notable lineup news, Dan?
Sunderland were unchanged. They were still playing the false nine, and Rotherham made a couple of changes. Taihi and Green were in for Wiles and the suspended Fred Onyedinma. That's it.
Okay, and key points from this game, Angus?
I'd just like to take everyone back to last week when you guys tried to move on quickly from Rotherham. And I said Hakeem Odoffin might be a 4.5 option. And a couple of people messaged me when Hakeem Odoffin scored in this game. So I just wanted to bring that back up because it's not often when you say something like that, particularly about someone like Odoffin, and it pays off so quickly. But no, the real story from this game is Joe Bellingham, who's obviously got a brace in this game. First one assist from Dan Neil, second one assist from Bradley Dack, which as a non-midfield Dynamos player was really entertaining that neither Jack Clark nor Patrick Roberts was involved in their goals. Especially basically all the other mids were involved except those two.
Couldn't write it, could you? Well, as you've mentioned, Bellingham, Angus, he is the featured player from this game. 2 goals, like you said, 3 shots, an XG of 1.07 and 85 minutes, Angus. You asked me to put that in there, so I'm going to come to you. Say, why did you ask me to
yes,
put 85 minutes?
I did promise there was a reason for that. I think it's important to note that he is playing significant minutes when he's playing. I know there was a lot of talk early on whether he was going to start about potentially splitting minutes, particularly with someone like Pritchard. The fact that he is playing significantly into the game is an encouraging sign for people who are potentially looking at him. So that's all it really was there, is just, you're not sort of going to be necessarily, I mean, there will be games when it happens. You're not necessarily going to be worrying when it gets to around 60 minutes about whether he's going to be going off the pitch. It does look like he might actually be playing deeper into the game now.
Your thoughts, Dan, from Sunderland's game?
I think Sunderland have been better this season than their points total. I think if you look back to the Ipswich game, I think another day that's a draw. Bellingham takes the golden chance first in the first half, and maybe it's a different game. Preston, they scored 2 free goals. Preston, one that hit Keane, and the other one Keane tripped over the ball, and it was an assist. And then obviously they've won this game, so I think they've probably been better than their points total have. So yeah, I wouldn't be writing off Sunderland. I think we're going to see them climbing up the table pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, and over the first 3 games, defensively, from the Gaffr assets, they're not pulling up any trees or anything like that. The numbers are low. Midfielders, though, it's interesting. Clark's on 20 points with Neil. Neil started well over the first 3 games. Ballingham's now got himself up to 17, but Patrick Roberts is only on 10. Obviously, they were very popular picks, Clark and Roberts, going into the season. What are your thoughts on those two? Like, the difference between them?
Yeah,
I think it's interesting because I think Roberts has still been decent. And, it's shown up in the bonus he's got, but he obviously hasn't got the returns. Where I think particularly the gap, him and Clark, I think Clark had a penalty that he won and scored, which obviously makes a big part of that difference up. Dan Neil has obviously got a couple of attacking returns as well. So I think, really the only thing missing from Patrick Roberts' sort of season so far compared to the others is just a couple of attacking returns.
Have I seen that Roberts is injured now, or?
So he went off injured in this game.
Okay.
I haven't seen anything. I was looking today. I haven't seen anything about the severity yet. They were going to be sort of assessing him, I think, yesterday. So that's another one that we might find out on later in the week.
Okay. And Dan, what's your advice to Roberts owners? Stay patient.
obviously it depends on the injury. I can't remember who do they have. Jamie, do you know next?
Yes, so they've got Coventry away this week, then Southampton at home, QPR away, and then Blackburn away.
I think I'd keep him. Coventry and Southampton aren't going to be defensive. That'll suit Sunderland players. So yeah, there's no need to get off Sunderland players. Like I said, they've done better than the results suggest.
And I think it'd be interesting to see if they bring in a forward before the deadline, because there's a lot of talk of seeing, Mowbray's even said it himself, if they get a striker in, a striker will score a lot of goals in that team. So that's worth keeping an eye on. Before I rudely move on, is there anything any of you'd like to say about Rotherham?
No, I'm not going to push Odoffin again. I think he's probably scored his goals for the season.
Right then.
I am worried.
Go on, sorry, Dan.
I am worried about Rotherham. And when they play away from home, I would definitely target them.
Yeah, they don't seem to have pushed on. Obviously, they finished the season well, didn't they? But they haven't really started well. I mean, we are very early in the season, but I do agree with you. They are one that I do worry about. But the last of our featured games, Dan, was Leicester 2, Cardiff 1. Notable lineup information.
Yeah, so Hermansen was back in goal, and Ndidi came in for Pratt. Sadie was on the bench. New signing. Cardiff, Romeo, Collins, and Rules were in for NG, Adams, and Grant.
Okay, and keynotes from this one, Angus?
So it's interesting for Leicester. Obviously, they got the opener from. I think everyone's resorted to calling him Marcel.
Yeah,
because they don't want to deal with the second part of his surname.
I can't even spell it. Never mind say it, Angus. I've just put Marcel on here.
Every time I've written it, I've had to look to make sure I've typed it correctly. I think every single time. It really doesn't help that it's just similar enough to Mavididi, who he plays with. It just sort of
Well, it's funny you say that, Angus, because I don't really check the scores when I'm at Stoke, but I can just feel my phone going off in my pocket all game through the group chats or scores. And I quickly checked the Leicester, and I saw Marcel had scored, and I did think it was Mavididi, which I can't say that either. And then I was just I've had enough of this game because I know how popular he is. But yeah, I thought it was quite funny.
Yeah, it was a good finish from him. Then topped by Aaron Ramsey with an absolute screamer.
Very good goal.
Top assist, Joe Rawls. And then obviously late on, the winner for Cassaday coming off the bench. To to be honest, I think if he didn't finish it, they were getting a penalty. Vardy's got the assist. I think he was trying to go past the defender to get a shot away, but got fouled, and Cassidy did the rest. So obviously he's off the mark right away, and I do think he'll probably come into the team quite quickly. But not necessarily the best showing from Leicester in this, I don't think either.
No, because just looking at the basic stats from the game here, they've obviously dominated possession like you'd expect them to do, but their XG was 0.66 compared to Cardiff's 1.08. I mean, they did have 15 shots, but only 6 on target, so they were having shots, but not very good by the looks of it. Featured player, though, is Kelechi Iheanacho. So he had 4 shots, 3 key passes, playing 76 minutes, accumulating 3 bonus points. Iheanacho is an interesting one, but I feel like we're saying the same thing. We need that window to shut.
Yeah.
And ideally, Iheanacho would still be a Leicester player, because I don't know about you two. If he is, I know who my first transfer is going to be.
Well, I mean, Leeds play Sheffield Wednesday, so is Iheanacho going to be your first transfer?
I'll take -8 Angus, no problem.
But yeah, I mean, I think we saw in the first game the difference when he came onto the pitch, and I think it was only logical after that he started very involved. He hit the post in this game as well, and I think the fact that he played deep into the game is interesting, because you sort of think, oh, is he going to be going off early, particularly because they've got Vardy and Daka. But 76 minutes, that's a decent way into the game before he got replaced. So I think if he stays, it certainly looks like he's going to be the first choice, which is obviously very interesting for everyone.
It is, and obviously they started well in terms of results, but then they've got Rotherham away next week, which is appealing. Hull at home, but then they've got Southampton away and Norwich away, back-to-back away games, which I think will be good tests for them based on what we've seen so far. What are your thoughts around Leicester and Iheanacho?
So I've not been overly impressed with Leicester. If you look back to the Coventry game, you could argue Coventry were the better side, and it was only, Dewsbury Hall basically won them the game through his brilliance. The other 2 games have been pretty even, but it's pretty similar to Southampton. They've got better players, and they get chances, and they win the game later on just because they're piling pressure on. So I think they're only going to get better, though, Leicester, when they learn the system more, they sort out the transfers. So it's a scary thought that Leicester could walk the league, I think, if they start clicking. With Iheanacho, yeah, pretty similar to you guys, just waiting for that window to close and then trying to juggle the assets to get him in. I'm not sure I want 3 attacking Leicester, though. Are you on 3, Jamie?
No, I'm just on 1.
Are you on 2?
I'm just on 1 at the moment,
see,
which is
I'm on 2. See, I'm on 2. I've got Mavididi and Dewsbury Hall. So, yeah, I think, Dewsbury Hall won't be going anywhere. But, yeah, I might have to get rid of Mavididi to get Iheanacho in, I think.
See, I missed the Mavididi when everyone went on to him. I missed that and missed his points as well. But I'm just looking at the Leicester's point scorers so far from this season, more Gaffr points. What I find interesting is they're quite spread around. So Dewsbury Hall, obviously 31 points, clearly been the best asset so far. But Mavididi's done well, 22. But then defence, Doyle 16, Ricardo 15, Faz 14, Vestergaard 12. So the defence is basically very even. Midfield, Pratt, Marçal 10 points each, Cassidy got 9 now, and then up front Vardy 10, Iheanacho 8. So other than Dewsbury Hall, and then you'd probably say Mavididi, Where do you go? Like, do you stick one in the defence? But like, I know Doyle's the highest scoring defender for them, but I don't really like going a centre back.
No, I think the problem is they don't really have an attacking defender, like as in a remotely attacking defender. I mean, I know Ricardo inverts into midfield, and so he might end up with key passes if he passes it to someone who sort of has a shot or whatever. But there's not sort of that attacking fullback really there, which is what you would really want in a team like Leicester with the quality they have. But it's not really there.
No, great. Dan, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I know Doyle has the last couple of games got a bit forward and had the odd shot, but yeah, I'm not thrilled by that, especially when you go through like Stacey, Davis, Hoover, Rankin Costello. Um, there's so many attacking wing backs that are key to their teams. I think they'll tick along just because I wonder if they might end up being so good that they just keep clean sheets just because the other team can't get the ball. And if that's the case, then maybe it starts being worth it getting a defender. But yeah, I'm looking at the attacking options.
Okay. Cardiff then, very quickly before we move on. They've got Sheffield Wednesday at home this week. So, by coincidence, I've got two Cardiff players that I kind of left on my bench this week just for this game. So you know what's going to happen. Sheffield Wednesday are going to pick up the first points of the season. But Ugbo, he's definitely got to be an option, Nancy, for people this week if they've got him.
I think so. If I wouldn't be going to buy him, but if people still
Yeah.
have him, particularly from buying him previously, absolutely.
Yeah, and is he the only one? Because obviously I went on Bowler as well at the time after that first game. Not been really impressed with him since, so I'll play him just with Sheffield Wednesday. But would you say Ugbo, or do you think Ramsey after a screamer could be an option?
I think Ramsey could be an option as it goes on because I think previously, particularly against the good teams, they ask him to do a little bit more from deep because he's their best player on the ball. Where I think when they're against some of the weaker teams, it might be a situation where he becomes a bit of a better option because he will probably end up higher up the pitch because there's less that he needs to do deep. So that's the theory at least as to why he might be a good option sort of in games like this against Sheffield Wednesday.
Okay, brilliant. Right, that is the end of the featured games then. We're now going to go into the other results. So what I'll do with these, Angus, Dan, is I'll just go through them one by one this time. And if there's anything that you'd want to say very briefly, just shout ahead. So the first one was Bristol City 0, Birmingham 2.
Nothing.
Nothing.
I just wanted to mention briefly there seems to be some excitement around this Miyoshi.
Well, on the highlights, they were talking about him like he was the next Messi.
Yeah, I think they've been sort of protecting him and easing him in, but he did take the goal well and apparently looked very bright sort of when he came on. It's worth noting he did come on for Ethan Laird in the first half, so people on him, that might be an issue.
Yes, okay.
Just can't stay fit, lad. Can't stay fit.
It's a shame, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Okay, Middlesbrough 1, Huddersfield 1.
I've got something to say about this. I thought Borough were a lot better this week. Their squad's starting to take shape. Engel, left back, brought in obviously to replace Giles from last year. I think he's quite attacking from his stats, and they've got a striker, Larsa Lekale or something. He missed a one-on-one, but they had a focal point, which I think helped Rodgers because Rodgers seemed to play quite well in this game, playing behind him. So they gradually getting there, and their numbers were actually really good. They should have beat Huddersfield really, but they keep missing chances.
Right, and Angus?
I was about to say, I was looking a little bit into their stats from this season because they've obviously had a bad start. By the stats, they've been absolutely fine. They just haven't got the results. Like, I mean, you think back to their game against Coventry. Yes, they lost 3-0 and that was bad. But even watching game and particularly watching the highlights, you think, well, Middlesbrough had almost as much of this as Coventry did. And then this, obviously, they've been better. So it's obviously not been a good start, but I did sort of think, okay, maybe it's not quite as bad as it looks. Like Dan says, I think Latolath helps having a focal point. I think if Rodgers and particularly Silvera could finish.
Oh, Silvera's at the end is absolutely shocking. What is he doing there?
Even he looked like he didn't know what he was doing. So, we should mention, we talked about a couple of screamers. Hayden Hackney.
Yeah.
That's some finish.
Yeah, it is a finish. Good goal. Next one was QPR 0, Ipswich 1. I've got something to say about this after you two.
Well, I'll jump in. I wanted to mention Sinclair Armstrong.
Oh,
I thought obviously I've only really seen the highlights, but based on what everyone was saying about the game, he was an absolute menace. How he doesn't score the goal that hits both posts and stays out, I still don't know. But he looked really good, and it'd be interesting to see what they do because Dykes was only a minor injury. It'd be interesting to see how they fit all those attacking players together. But particularly, I know we don't want to look at forwards from bad teams or whatever, but the way he looked, he might be an option at some point this season.
I agree. There's no way they can't play him. Even if Dykes is fit, he has got to play because he just offers something different. There's not many like him really. He's very quick, very strong, powerful. Obviously, good finish. I know he hasn't scored here, but from that angle to it on the inside of the post and it comes off the other one, and then his run with the chop back. Yeah, big fan. I haven't seen a lot of him. I'll be honest. I've only seen the highlights, but I'm looking forward to watching a bit more of him. And I know Chris, my teacher's a big fan of him.
Yeah.
Anything else? Ipswich?
Yeah. They got a bit lucky in this game, didn't they?
Yeah.
This wasn't a good performance by Ipswich. Davis did do well in a tight game. He stepped up with the bonus. We'll see. I'm still not convinced by Ipswich. Like I put them in. I put them in 17th. I don't think they're going to be that bad, but from what I've seen, then I don't think they're going to get top 6. But we'll wait and see. Let's see how they do against Leeds and things like that.
I think it's really difficult when you've only watched the highlights because you don't see a lot, and from the highlights, he just looks like Sinclair's battered Ipswich. So I would like to see the extended highlights on that because obviously I was quite impressed by Ipswich. But one thing I want to say was, why did we have to have Luke on the podcast at the beginning of the season? Him talking about numbers. Yeah.
Chaplin.
What did I say last? In all fairness, though, it would have been a 50-50 between Hurst and Chaplin for me. And I might have just gone Hurst. But I didn't. I've gone for the numbers because that's what Luke does, and he's finished top 10 every year. So I thought, right, I'm going to be sensible. Because if I'd gone Chaplin or Hurst and Broadhead went off, I'd have been fuming with myself. So yeah, I'm not impressed with Luke at the moment, I'll be honest.
Well, I said after we'd recorded the pod last week that everyone was going Broadhead, so I was going to go Chaplin. I ended up going Broadhead, and Chaplin scores.
I'm really impressed with Chaplin, though. From on the eye, he looks really good. He's involved in a lot of things. So if I had to make the decision again, obviously in hindsight, he scored, I would go Chaplin. I just need to try and find a balance between looking at the numbers and going off what I've actually seen with my own eyes. But yeah, not impressed with that one. Sheffield Wednesday lost 1-0 at home to Preston. Third loss in a row for Sheffield Wednesday. Not good.
Just target Sheffield Wednesday, especially. I think maybe more defensively. Like if you've got defenders just playing, they're offering nothing going forward, really.
Yeah, it sounds harsh, but you're completely right.
It is.
They're not very good at the moment. So Yeah, I'll definitely be targeting Sheffield Wednesday this week. Preston, obviously, Liam Windsor getting their goal from a corner, but what's their young 17-year-old left back's name again? Best?
Yep. Yeah, Kean Best.
That was it, yes. Impressive
Great
cross
ball.
there. I think he's worth keeping an eye on. Stoke 1, Watford 0.
Hoover, very lucky assist. The fact that I think 2 people managed to completely miss it, meaning it went straight through. Fortunate for him. Another goal very well taken by Vidigal, though.
Yeah, I think Vidigal.
Is he an option?
Yes.
Is he an option, Jamie?
Yeah, I didn't say yeah the other week because it's a couple of games in as he had just like a flat start. But yeah, he played well. Obviously played up front, changed system. So played up front with Wesley. Took his goal was really, really good though. I was really impressed by his goal. Hoover, good Gaffr asset. Crap player. Well, defensively crap. He's not crap going forward, but he reminded me what I disliked about him so much last season. He got done quite a few times, and we were quite lucky not to concede in that game. But going forward, he's not as attacking as he has been since the Rotherham game over the 2 games. He's not getting forward as much. Like you can see from the goal, the crosses from very deep. But yeah, he's definitely an option though still, because if he does get some, he will get bonus in our team. And last one, Swansea 1, Coventry 1. I sold Yates for Broadhead. Annoying.
Yeah, I think I've been talking a lot about the ability of Yates to cover Piroe. I think we saw it again here. Ashby with a return as well. We've talked about the Swansea wing backs. I think they're both options as well.
Yeah. Right, that wraps up the results then. Is there anything you'd like to
Just
add?
want to...
Yeah.
Yeah, just about Coventry. As expected, Haji Wright did come into the side for Sims, and he got an assist, so that's 2 attacking returns. So I like this Coventry side, so I'm just waiting for a point to jump in with some of their assets.
Same, but I'm big on Matty Godden at the moment. Scored again.
Yeah.
He always seems to be in the right place at the right time. I do like Matty Godden, so he's high on my watch list, just waiting for the opportunity to jump on there. So that wraps that up then. We're going to wrap the podcast up with the Twitter questions. I've got the... It always does that. I've had it open all podcasts and I've clicked on it and it just goes back to my homepage. Bear with me, listeners. It's got roughly around about 14 questions, so we'll fly through these like we normally do. I'll come to you one at a time, and I'll start with Angus. So our favourite John Jaco has asked, it's about me. It's not. Will Jamie be paying me out early in the Cash League?
No, because you won't be winning it.
No, and even if he did win it, I'm just going to do a runner with the money. I'm not paying him anything. I'll pay, and if anybody else in the Cash League, don't worry, I will pay you out. I'm not paying him nothing.
Second, third, maybe fourth. Just do, instead of first, second, third, it's second, third, fourth.
Yeah, just not paying John anything. Dan FPL Frog, why is Gabriel Sara only in 14% of teams? And how much therapy am I going to need when Man City realise he's the perfect Lucas Paqueta alternative?
Yeah, he's ridiculous, isn't he? What's he averaging? 6 key passes a game or something so far this season? Yeah, they need that window to close pretty quickly, or maybe just do 4 key passes this week, Sarah. Just 4 this week.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to get that question next week as
excellent.
well, before the window closes.
Yeah. He's 20% owned.
Yeah, definitely.
How comes he's not in more teams?
Right, Angus Renarid has asked, do you think the amount of boost being used has been a bit knee-jerky? For those that have not used any, do you think it's better to wait for more info to see which teams or players are the ones to target?
I wouldn't necessarily say knee-jerky, but I've been surprised how many have been used early on. I get that some people, get a bit excited and, want to sort of use the boosts. I understand home advantage game week 1 was a thing and that's slightly different. I get the midfield dynamos this week. A lot of people's midfields fell quite nicely in terms of the fixtures. I've seen some people already talking about triple in game week 4, again, because of the fixtures for the likes of Dewsbury Hall, Sara and Armstrong. I think one thing I would advise is some people seem to be using boosts because they feel like they're falling behind, or wanting to use boosts because they feel like they're falling behind. I wouldn't be worrying about that. With 3 game weeks in, and particularly you're just seeing your rank going down. You're not seeing the fact that you haven't, for example, you haven't used any boosts and other people have used like 2 boosts. And so that's why you're falling behind. You can't really assess it early on. So if that's why you're using a boost, I'd second guess it. If you're looking at it and for example, in the triple example this week, if you're looking at it and saying, I think this with, Dewsbury Hall, Sara and Armstrong is the best opportunity I'm going to get, then yeah, go for it. So it depends on your reasoning, really.
Yep, brilliant. Dan, you are there. You disappeared for a second. FF Deakin has asked, we kind of covered it, but just to summarise it, how do you guys feel about Manning? Obviously a great asset, but yet to prove he's worth 7 million. Is the potential enough to wait and see?
Like I said earlier on, got QPR. He's getting one more game week, and then I'm gonna see my options. I'd like it for him to not get booked, and then we can properly see how his bonus does. But yeah, he's getting one more week for me.
Angus, Ollie, Ash, FPL has asked, is Rowe now someone we should be looking to get in ASAP? And are there any chip strategies emerging in the immediate future? Midfield dynamos seem like a mixed bag for people this week. So we've covered Rowe, haven't we?
Yeah, I think it's not a must buy, but in terms of the balance, he obviously helps. I think we're getting to the point where we're looking past the fact that he's now 4.7 mid, and just looking at the fact he's a starting winger for Norwich. So I think obviously that makes him an even more attractive option because of his price. But yeah, I think it's about it's not a must. I don't think. I mean, even this week, particularly he got his goal, and obviously for a player of that price, that's great. There's another one got booked, no bonus. He's got a 7-pointer. Obviously, other weeks he's got more, but it's that sort of thing. Is he going to be getting the bonus? Is it going to be entirely reliant on his returns? That sort of thing. So it might be worth us. Some people will just get him, and that's absolutely fine. But I wouldn't say he's a must get. What was the other part of the question?
Are there any chip strategies emerging in the immediate future?
Not really. I mean, there's certain weeks that will jump out to people for certain boosts. Like I said, triple in 4. I think game week 5 is due to be quite a good week for boosts. I think it's around game week 9, game week 11, game week 14. There's some of these weeks that are good for boosts, but in terms of which ones you use, I think it's a little bit more up in the air.
I haven't even looked at a boost strategy.
No,
My
me neither.
plan is international break, get that out of the way. Just make sure there's no injuries or anything like that, and then we've had quite a few weeks then for a bit of information, and then go from there. I'm going to ask you both this question, but I'm going to come to Dan first on it. We have covered it, but not in this way. Thoughts on Sara versus Rowe? Do you get the cheaper option or get both? Interested to hear your opinions on this, and that's from Carl JB.
So for me, Sara is probably the second best player in the game, probably behind Dewsbury Hall at the minute. So he's not an option. I don't have Rowe, but I think he's nice at that price. But for me, he's probably on the same level as Stacey and Sargent. I don't know what about you, Angus. What do you feel?
I mean, Sara's the better asset. I think he's so pivotal to everything and so involved that he to me, if you were only getting one, I would get him, even with the price difference. It's worth it. it's certainly viable to go with both. I like I said, the only Norwich player I've got is Sara, and I'm sort of weighing up which ones I want to get. And Rowe is very much in the conversation, but I personally wouldn't be getting him instead of Sara.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm the opposite. I've got Rowe and not Sara, but I want to change that. I'm happy with Rowe, and obviously he's scoring, so he's great value. But there's going to be at some point this season where he's not scoring all the time, and he's, even though he's so cheap as an enabler, he's blocking you from a Norwich asset. So if you wanted to go Stacey defensively or you wanted Sargent, he's blocking that, isn't he? So. But I think at the moment he's absolutely fine. Right, I'm going Angus's question. Dan's question, because I came to both of you once it. The FPL will never stop, has asked Dan. Now we have a few weeks of information. What are your early thoughts on boost strategy? I should probably read these first. We've just covered that.
Basically, yeah. I might have a look at 5. Because that is a nice game week. And I'll probably think about that before I do my transfer. If I plan on doing a transfer this week or rolling or things like that, I'm definitely going to look at 5. But yeah, I'm going back to this week. My team just wasn't set up, so it wasn't an option for me to play midfield diamonds. I had Vaughan and James. And I needed to take Semedo out, so I wasn't in a place to do it really. But yeah, like I said, I think the earliest I want to play one is maybe 5.
Okay.
But I've not thought of what one and any more further down the line.
Okay. Angus Editor has asked, is targeting players against QPR still on, or is it now over?
I think it still has to be considered. I mean, Ipswich didn't necessarily have the best game against them, but, do you really want to throw away what there was before based on one game? It's certainly not going to be abandoned this week with Southampton. And then I think, if Southampton do what they're capable of, then everyone's going to be right back on target QPR. I think it's, it was probably we focused a little bit on QPR where it's more sort of like target the 3 or 4 teams you think are worst, which a lot of people think that applies to QPR. It might not as we go along, but I'm going to need to see more from them before I sort of think that they're not worth sort of looking to sort of target.
Yeah.
I think another thing to mention with with QPR is that first game they had that youngster Gubbins playing. They've got Steve Cook now, and I know he's a good solid defender, Steve Cook. So especially in the championship. So I think he's making a big difference at the back.
I wasn't impressed with his defending for Chaplin's goal though. He's got to stop that shot, either with a tackle or a block or something. Someone of his experience. But no, I agree with your general points. Dan, is it safe to buy Tyler or Che Adams? And that's from FPL Red Arrow.
No, I know everyone will want to because they got QPR, but I've got Manning and Armstrong, and that'll be it for me at Southampton because players just suddenly randomly don't play at Southampton at the minute. So just hold off a few more days. But if Che Adams ends up staying, Adams and Armstrong, it is an option to get both.
Yeah. Angus, Niall Fairbrother, my phone's just locked. Fairbrother has asked, best defender for 6 million. I'm looking at a Leicester defender. Any suggestions? Which one would be the best?
I mean, if you're set on a Leicester defender, I think it's Doyle. Just because I don't think Pereira's worth the 0.5 over him. I think if you're looking elsewhere, I think we've talked about Stacey, we've talked about sort of Mumba, we've talked about Hoover. I think those are the areas you're probably looking at that point. If you're moving beyond those, maybe like I say, maybe one of the Swansea wing backs. So yeah, I think that, and Luke Ayling.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely spot on there. Dan, this is quite a good question for you, actually. It's quite fitting that it's come to you. Jaskaran Singh has asked, is it time to lose patience with Piroe and transfer him out? Average position is slightly behind the 8, while XG data is still kind of similar.
Yeah. We mentioned last week when we looked at the fixtures, you might just keep knocking it down the road. And he is one person. I am debating about getting Sargent in. And for me, Piroe would be the one to go. So it's going to depend on my boost strategy if I'm playing 1 in 5. But like patience is wearing thing on Piroe. And we mentioned last week about the Yates covering him. Well, Yates has 2 goals this season, and is he 7-5? Is he Yates?
Yeah,
Unless he's moved,
he
he
started
started
7-5.
7-5. Unless he's moved,
Yeah. So
7-6 now.
Oh, I might not go there now. No, like it's hard to justify it when you can go down to Yates for what 2.4 savings. So yeah, but he's also not like a drastic. If you've got other things to do, they're playing Preston. They're more than capable of scoring against Preston. So, but he's not essentially an essential move to do. But if you want to do something, maybe take a punt or get something early, then yeah, I don't see a problem with it.
Okay, FPL Courtney's asked a question that we've already answered was when is the best time to use the first boost? We've just covered that over too, but thank you for posting the question, Courtney. Angus, FPL Rockers 77. Best replacement for Dykes? Connolly, Chaplin or Asante? No, I wasn't expecting this question.
I'm a little bit thrown off by the options listed as well. I think, as well as Aaron Connolly has done, I don't think you can go there when he's still not starting games. Like, if he's starting games, and even just like, he's not going to keep it up. I think he scored 3 goals from 4 shots or something. Like, then if he's starting and still returning, then sure. Thomas Asante, like I said, I wasn't impressed with West Brom at all, and he's got a goal there for a handball, like for a shot hitting him. You know, I think an Ipswich forward is still a potential option. Otherwise, there's some interesting options around. We talked about the Plymouth guys. I think are well worth looking at as well in terms of Whitaker and Hardy, depending on whether there's any sort of budget issues there. The Ipswich guys are still an option. No, I think I wouldn't necessarily be advising people with their fixtures to go into Sinclair Armstrong yet, but so I think that's probably the main sort of area you're going to look. Or if you just want to make an immediate decision and then reassess, we've talked about Ugbo against Sheffield Wednesday. That's the other option.
Okay, and then the last question, Dan, FPL Blindside. Is it time to transfer out Sims at Coventry?
Yeah, you have to. It's not starting. He's fallen behind Wright and Godden. So yeah, definitely transfer out.
Okay, brilliant. Well, that's a wrap up on the Twitter questions, Dan. So thank you very much to everybody who posted a question, and the answers were helpful. And that is a wrap on the Game Week 3 review. Is there any housekeeping that we need to do, Angus? Super League update? Or Super League pod update?
There won't be a pod this week.
Boo.
I'm looking to sort of put out a thread of our 3 key takeaways, just to sort of give people a little bit of what we were thinking. But I won't be able to do a pod this week. So there'll be a little bit on that, but pod will be back next week.
I look forward to that one. And then regarding our normal pod championship, it will be audio only next week, won't it? Is that
Yeah, I might
correct?
try and put out sort of a basic video because Jamie isn't here to do all the graphics. I might just sort of put out sort of similar to what we used to have, just a basic sort of YouTube video of me and Dan on the screen talking, but there won't be any of the sort of fancy graphics.
Well, or graphics. I wouldn't say they're fancy. Some people might say, "Oh, I nearly swore then." But yeah, no, I am unfortunately away next week, so I cannot record. But I look forward to coming back for the game week 5 review, and of course, now I get to listen to the podcast because I definitely do not listen to my voice back. So when I'm not on, I do enjoy listening. So yeah, but yeah, I think that's everything, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Right, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Remember, like I said at the beginning, make sure you just do anything, interact with it. Just anything helps. We're not even forcing, but make sure you leave that 5-star review. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.